Oh, hi guys. Oh, sorry. Gotta pull my sticker off. So I am getting ready for our Seder dinner. I have the lamb in the oven cooking, and I'm currently peeling some potatoes and gonna be making the haroset soon. But while I'm peeling potatoes and getting everything ready, I just wanted to share with you guys this study that I am doing. So let's go to it. This is from the One for Israel Ministry channel, and it's called Shocking Expose Israeli Professors Unveil Secrets of the Passover Seder. It's about 40 minutes long, but I've got lots of prep to do, so enjoy.
Unifying moments for every Jewish family is sitting together around the Passover table and reading the Haggadah, the traditional Passover booklet setting forth the order of the Passover Seder. But what many times we as Jews miss during the traditional Seder is to wonder, how did we receive this ceremony and what are its origins? Surprisingly, the most ancient historical reference to the Passover meal, with clear indications of some aspects of the traditional Seders, are not found in the Mishnah or the Gemara, but possibly where you least expect to find it, in the New Testament. Yes, this is the so-called Last Supper of Yeshua and his disciples. So, what is the connection between the Seder and Passover? What does the Passover have to do with Yeshua of Nazareth? What other mysteries are present in plain sight on the Seder table, just waiting for the Jewish people to discover them? Come, we have saved you a seat at the table. I'm here with Dr. Seth Postel and Dr. Golan Broshi, and we would like to discuss the Passover story with you. So I'll start with quoting Professor Israel Yuval of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, that claims that the current Passover Seder tradition includes many ceremonies and stages that have been adopted from the ancient Jewish disciples of Yeshua, the Messianic Jews of old. How did Professor Yuval get to this? Where do we see Yeshua in the traditional Passover Seder?
Yep. So actually I have the article in front of my eyes, the article that he wrote many years ago, and he said after the destruction of the temple, the Jewish people were left with two competing narratives. What do you do with redemption under the Roman occupation? What do you do with this Passover? What do you do with the holiday? Mm-hmm. So two competing narratives, and he says the former one was the Messianic. The later one, as a response, was the rabbinic Seder. But
Very
the former, yes, this is amazing.
It's interesting actually too that the first actual mention of a Passover Seder in Jewish sources is the New Testament.
Absolutely.
So Professor Yuval actually says that the first mention is the Last Supper. He calls the Last Supper the first mention of a Seder after Exodus 12, the 12th chapter.
So we should start calling it the First Supper.
So is there anything on the table in these symbolic meal, elements that seem to support this position? Maybe we can say a word about the matzah. Can you hand it over, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Seth? So in the traditional Seder, we have 3 whole matzahs that are put in this special bag. And then in a very central part of the Passover, the middle matzah is taken. You break it in half. You put half of it back in. And then you put the other half in a different bag. And that different bag, now this half a matzah is called the afikomen. And it's hidden. And after the meal, the children need to find it, and whoever finds it gets a reward. Do you guys think that symbolizes anything or hints us for anything.
You know, I know that there's all sorts of attempts to explain what in the world the three matzahs mean. There's no question that, and I think the biggest question always ends up is why is the middle matzah broken and buried? And what is pretty spectacular is the fact that, you know, you would expect that after the meal, the service is over. You know, you're tired, right?
Sure.
But it's actually, the end of the meal becomes sort of almost the focus.
Celebration.
The celebration and the dessert of this afikoman that you're eating together. You take from one afikoman, it's distributed among the people. You take it with the third cup. I mean, it's hard.
Right?
It's hard not to see, you know, one of the central ceremonies, one of the central memorial meals for Messianic Jewish faith or Christian faith in the Seder ceremony.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, Professor Yuval saying the epikoman, the after the meal, says this is exactly what he says Messianic Jews saw as Yeshua's second coming and revealing himself to Israel. And there's no wonder that the rabbis also, maybe, as he said, picked it up and tried to seal it. Yeah.
I think in Luke it talks about a cup. He took a cup, right? It says in verse 17, the same chapter. And when he had taken a cup and given thanks, he said, "Take this and share it among yourselves. For I say that I will not drink of the fruit of the vine from now on until the kingdom of God comes." And then he had taken some bread and given thanks. Okay, it's interesting here. A cup before and a cup after dinner. I always remembered the way that the Passover meal unfolds is by the order of the cups. Right? And so you can really see within the Gospels there is an order of cups. Interestingly enough, and I find this to be very fascinating, after they'd sang a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Well, you know, we actually know what he sang. It wasn't Amazing Grace, right? It was the Shirei Hallel.
Right.
It was the Hallel Psalms, which begins in, what is it, Psalm 113, I think?
113 to 118.
To 118. Now, what's really interesting is that means the last psalm on Jesus' lips before he goes to Golgotha is the stone which the builders have rejected has become the chief cornerstone.
Right.
And so we actually know that, you know, we even know the Psalms that Jesus was singing with his disciples that evening before he went to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Amazing detail. And Golan, you wanted to say a word about the epikomen. Why do we have a Greek word in our Passover Seder?
Yes, so scholars try to find, and they say the rabbis were stuck ben apatish lasadan, between
Rock and a hard place.
Rock and a hard place.
They had to refer to the Messianic Seder, and they were influenced from the Greek symposium, they say. So some scholars say the afikoman was a name of a celebration of the Greeks after the party, and that's where it borrowed a Greek word into the Hebrew Agadah, the rabbinic Agadah. But what's interesting is the afikoman, you eat it after it was hidden, it was found. Each of the members of the table is taking kazait, like a small portion,
piece,
and have to eat it, almost saying, "This is my body."
Yeah. So this is shared.
This is shared, exactly.
Shared between
all the participants, and then they even say zecher lekorban Pesach.
A memorial, a remembrance of the Passover sacrifice.
Yeah, before eating it. You can't get clearer than that, right?
So the Passover, the representation of the Passover lamb is shared between everybody, like the peace offering, and then the following step is praise, and the last one is called nirtzah, accepted.
Accepted, yeah.
So you celebrate the fact that the sacrifice is accepted once and for all. That's a beautiful picture of the sacrifice of the Messiah.
Amen.
I think also the fact that you actually have the Greek there actually then shows that, that the Passover Seder and some of the things that developed in the time of the Second Temple period, right? In other words, which does make a direct connection, or at least, a connection
Right.
to Jesus in the time that he celebrated with his disciples.
Right. Kind of like when in a similar way that Ezra and Nehemiah in their season spoke Aramaic, and that was a spoken language. In Second Temple period, Greek was actually the word and the culture that was connecting people. It seems like it's safe to say, and even non-messianic Jewish professors have said that the Last Supper is actually one of the first indications for a Passover meal, the order of the meal. So I want to read a verse from Luke chapter 22 and ask a question, and it's Luke 22 verse 8. So Jesus sent Peter and John saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat it." What does it mean to prepare the Passover?
Yeah, well, if you look at the Last Supper, like for instance, there was sop on the table, right? So the dipping of the sop after, the man who will betray me is the one with whom I dip the sop. And so the whole notion of seder is an order. Okay, it was a meal that had a ceremony.
Right.
Luke mentions the cup before, the cup after. So there obviously were definite preparations that went into getting ready for a ceremonial meal, which then Yeshua explains is about him.
And Yeshua tells his disciples to prepare, right? Prepare the Passover.
I'm sure each one of us have done several congregational or bigger circle type Passover Seders, and there's all those preparation. You have to prepare the matzahs in a certain way, the Passover, the cups for the wine, and many of those things. So.
There's also preparation before, right? So Paul actually in 1 Corinthians 5, he talks about the biur chametz, the getting rid of the leaven.
That's right.
Right? And so obviously the whole preparation even beforehand of making sure that there was no leaven whatsoever.
Right. And what's the main thing that had to be prepared that Jesus is referring? What's the main thing that, in Rabbinic Judaism is not talked about? What's the main thing to prepare? I think the shank-bone is hinting on it. Exactly. The lamb itself. That's the Passover lamb that is slain. And back then at the temple.
Yeah.
It's a little bit ironic that today, at least in our family, they put a pulke, a leg of a chicken, right? They got rid completely of the lamb, any hints of the lamb. Professor Yuval and others are mentioning that Moses appeared one time in the whole Haggadah, and he says it's a deliberate attempt to say we don't need a mediator. We got the Torah directly, we got the commandments directly from God. No Aaron, no Moses. Moses, the hero. One time in the whole Haggadah, and Professor Yuval said it's deliberately because they want to get rid of the necessity of a middleman, a metavech.
Yeah.
So interestingly, we said that the Passover lamb is our korban, is our sacrifice. Yeah. So Professor Breuer, a different professor, Mordechai Breuer, asked the question, and he's a religious professor, Jewish religion. He asked, wait a minute, the Passover lamb couldn't be a sacrificial lamb. There was no. You take the blood and you put it on your post, but where's the sacrificial lamb? It's not a sacrificial lamb, allegedly. But then Breuer said there's two hints from Exodus, the 12 chapters. The 12th chapter, the Passover lamb was actually a sacrificial lamb, and he says two things. It says on Exodus 12:5 that it has to be an innocent lamb, 1 year old, and the second hint, it says you have to eat it all and burn it all and eat it exactly like the priests are commanded in Leviticus. So he said, after all, a religious professor, he says the Passover lamb is a sacrificial lamb that is, it's like a forecast of that sacrificial lamb. Exactly like John the Baptist said when he saw Yeshua, right?
Yeah. It's actually interesting, and maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later about, the whole connection actually between Passover as a redemptive sacrifice. I mean, what Golan shared is actually very interesting because we actually see prophets later reading Exodus chapter 12 in that light.
But a different professor, Buyarin, Professor Daniel Boyan, says not only there's two competing narratives, he said both narratives believe in the Logos. He said the Messianic has the Logos figure as the Messiah, but the rabbis have their own Logos. It says it's the oral law. So each of the two movements, Jewish movements, find their logos in the Passover story in the Bible. We find Yeshua in the Old Testament. They find the oral law in the Old Testament. But Boyarin said both Judaisms believe in the logos. Which one is the true biblical logos? That's the question. And I think the Passover shows that only Yeshua can be the true Passover lamb and the logos, the real logos.
Well, super interesting. So we can say that both biblical as well as historical sources confirm that the Passover Seder has not only deep messianic meaning, but also roots. And so, you want to say something about it?
Actually, if you're talking about the roots, so this is amazing because rabbis and the Apocrypha, Sfarim Chitzoniyim, Apocrypha, they saw Genesis 22 with Isaac and Abram as a Passover rehearsal, if you can say. So in verse 2, God is commanding Abram to take his only son, Isaac, and then verse 6, and this is amazing, verse 6, it says, Abram put the wood on Isaac. And Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, Midrash, I don't know how you say Midrash in English.
Commentary?
A rabbinic commentary, ancient rabbinic commentary said, Isaac looked like a man carrying up his cross to the Akedah, to the place.
Binding,
Yeah. So Isaac appeared as a man taking up his cross. Now, in verse 9, it says that Abram tied Isaac really he tied him to the altar, Akadoto. Yeah, he tied him. And it says, the Midrash Tanchumai, a different Midrash, rabbinic Midrash says, why did he tie him so strong? Because Isaac said, Daddy, I want you to tie me strong so when you kill me, I wouldn't move and break a leg. Because if I break a leg, I wouldn't be
kosher.
Exactly, for the sins of Israel. This is Midrash
Interesting.
Tanchuma. This is a rabbinic Midrash. Isaac is saying, bind me tightly so I wouldn't break a bone. And of course, it's now when he says break a bone, it goes back to not Leviticus, Exodus 12:46, when he says the Passover lamb should be with no broken bones. And of course, John 19:36 said that's a messianic prophecy that was fulfilled in Yeshua, but it's not entirely, it's not over yet. It says that the binding of Isaac was in a very specific day, on the 14th of Nisan.
Interesting.
In the Masoretic text, it says on Mount Moriah. In Sefer Yuvalim, the book of Jubilees, it says it was on the Mount of Zion, where the temple is. So Abram is taking Isaac, and Isaac is taking up his cross to the Holy of Holies to be slaughtered for the sins of Israel. And it says Israel were celebrating 7 days, exactly in the date of Passover, the binding of Isaac. All in the book of Jubilees, in the 14th of Nisan.
So that's a tradition that precedes the time of
200
Yeshua.
BC.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting too, is that, it almost at first sounds, wow, where are they getting this? It seems like they're kind of dressing on the text very strange things. But then you actually start to read the story of Abraham. And for instance, there's a famine in the land in Genesis 12, verse 10. He goes down and he tells his wife, make sure that, that you tell them that you're my sister because they'll kill me and they'll let you live. And then she's taken, and then God puts plagues on the house of Pharaoh, and God redeems him or releases them, and they come up out of Egypt with the riches of Egypt, gold and silver. And
sounds familiar.
Well, it sounds familiar because in you have this principle of Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. The deeds of the father are assigned to the sons, and so when you start to actually trace Abram's steps down to Egypt and out of Egypt, you actually do realize that in an intentional way, Abraham's life does in fact foreshadow things to come. So you would almost, just based on seeing the parallels between Abraham coming out of Egypt and Israel coming out of Egypt, you'd want to say, I wonder what Genesis 22 actually means. And in other words, it invites that kind of a reading.
This is amazing, because what Professor Yuval is saying in his article, that the way Luke in Acts portrayed Peter released from jail was Peter as Israel. Peter with the language. He says the language is taken from Exodus 12. The language of Peter released from the jail. So Luke is portraying Peter as Israel. Again, showing the interaction between the two Seders, the rabbinic one and the messianic one.
So this is super interesting to think about the life of Abram foreshadowing the Exodus, foreshadowing the Messiah himself. So are there any passages that we can think that supports the messianic interpretation of the Passover?
Absolutely. So this is a big issue. So I remember talking to an ultra-Orthodox Jewish guy, and he really came after me. He said, the New Testament says, that Jesus is the Passover lamb that takes away the sin of the world. He said, well, that's nonsensical because the Passover was not a sacrifice for sin. Right. And so what's really interesting, and again, I'm going to kind of get to this in a very roundabout way. So what's amazing is that when you start to look at the way that the prophets describe redemption, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, Hosea, whenever they're speaking about the future and future redemption, they almost automatically, by default, describe the first Exodus as a picture of future redemption. Even in Zechariah chapter 14, when the Lord comes and steps on the Mount of Olives, how does he rescue them? He splits the mountain in two. He splits the mountain in two, and they pass through the middle of the mountain like the splitting of the Red Sea. Now, where is this all going? If you look at Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, on many occasions, Isaiah makes a direct connection between future redemption and the Exodus. And perhaps one of the most significant passages in all of Isaiah, Isaiah 40 through 55. Scholars call Isaiah 40 through 55 Isaiah's new Exodus. Now, what you have there is a picture of future redemption, where God would ultimately redeem Israel, not just from the captivity, a physical captivity, but a captivity from what? For their sins. How did they end up in exile? Because of their sins. One of the key figures in Isaiah's new Exodus is a servant of the Lord. 4 times, on 4 different passages, Isaiah chapter 42, 49, 50, 53, or the end of 52 and 53, you have what's called the servant songs. Now, we talked about the Seder, the Haggadah, no reference to Moses. It is so sad because the key to the redemption that Isaiah describes is Passover redemption. And again, he describes Israel coming out like a Passover, like going out of Egypt. The key to this redemption is the servant of the Lord. The servant of the Lord is primary in bringing Israel out of captivity, not just physical captivity, but captivity for their sins. In other words, the centrality of a new Moses. Now, along those lines, I would love to read something, okay? As you get towards the end of Isaiah's new Exodus, Isaiah chapter 52, I'm going to read a few verses that are remarkable. So it says in Isaiah 52, verse 10 and following, the Lord has bared his holy arm, right? The Lord redeemed Israel with his holy arm, right? In the sight of all nations, all the ends of the earth may see the salvation of our God. That seeing the salvation of our God, that's exactly the words of God to Moses, right? The Egyptians will see the salvation, okay? I think that's in Exodus chapter 14. Then in verse 11 of chapter 52, depart, go out from there. Again, get out of there. Exodus language, touching nothing unclean. Go out of the midst of her. Purify yourselves, you who carry the vessels of the Lord. Verse 12, listen to this. But you will not go out in haste. That word haste, chipazon, it's only used 2 other times. Only used 2 other times. It's used in Exodus, and it's used in Deuteronomy to describe Israel departing Egypt in haste. This is going to be a better Passover. This is going to be a better redemption. You will not go out in haste. Why? Nor you go as fugitives, for the Lord will go before you. Exactly as God led the people of Israel out of Egypt, he went before them, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. Once again, allusions to the Passover. But here's what I find to be most remarkable. All these allusions come from Exodus 12, 13, and 14. In other words, the reference to chipazon, coming out in haste, that's Exodus 12. So you could actually say that I know where Isaiah, as he was writing this passage, I know where his Bible was open to. Exodus 12, 13, 14. Why is that significant? The height, the crescendo of this new Exodus is the introduction of the servant of the Lord. Isaiah chapter 52, verse 13. Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. Then he starts to describe the death of the servant of the Lord. And how will he die? It's really amazing. It says in verse 7 of chapter 53, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb, say.
Of course.
Say is a Passover lamb, right? Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. Wait a minute, why does he die? It already tells us. Verse 5 in the same chapter. He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. In other words, you could say, how careless of the New Testament authors to say that the Passover lamb who dies for Israel's redemption is an offering for sin. Well, let's then put the blame on Isaiah. 700 years before Jesus said, how careless Isaiah was to call this new Passover lamb a lamb that dies for the sins of the nation. John was not being careless. He was not forcing a Christian view on he was being a careful reader of the Hebrew Bible. He had already seen that Isaiah connected these dots. And so this whole notion of this Passover lamb dying for the sins of the world and a messianic interpretation of the Passover lamb comes right from the book of Isaiah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And actually the Exodus, the better Exodus with God going before and after, we also see that in Revelation chapter 12, when the remnant is escaping. So, but maybe that's for another discussion.
Actually, though, it is really interesting. If you look at the book of Revelation and you look at the way that God puts plagues, there's plagues, and there's the Song of Moses, and he brings his people to the desert, right? And you've got this victory over the Antichrist, who's like this new Pharaoh. So even there, what you see remarkably is that the Passover isn't just fulfilled in Jesus' first coming.
Exactly.
The Passover and Exodus, there's still aspects of the first Exodus that are still pointing forward to a future redemption.
To be continued.
To be continued, exactly.
That's really right. So in connection to that, actually, it's good we mentioned Pharaoh. I want to ask this. Why did Pharaoh specifically wanted to destroy the males, all the males?
So biblical scholars are this is an enigma for them. They don't understand. If you want to wipe out the Jewish people, a nation, why only the men? Why only the boys? Why only the baby boys? If you want to do a good job, why the
adult males?
And not only that, the women, because it takes, let's say you try to murder all the boys, but one survived. It takes only one to make a lot of women pregnant. But what if you try to wipe out the women? If one woman survives, it's much harder. So if Pharaoh wanted to wipe out the Jewish people for generations, he should have wiped out the baby girls, not the baby boys. But why the baby boys? So a hint is actually in Exodus 1:2, but that's a small hint. A bigger hint comes later. A hint, it says, and a man of the tribe of Levi took a woman and a child was born. Okay. Whoa, wait a minute, child? What does a specific child named Moses has to do with anything? But then Josephus, in the Iniquities of the Jews, it's called Kadmoniot HaYehudim.
The Antiquities.
Antiquities of the Jews. I think it's book 2, chapter 9. It says that wise men came to Pharaoh and told him, a king of the Jews is born, and he's going to take you out, Pharaoh. He's going to take you out, so you better take him out first. And that's why Pharaoh didn't want to kill just everybody. He wanted a specific messianic figure. And Moses, he was looking for a specific, he said, okay, so wipe all the male. But he was looking, as Josephus says, for Moses. And of course, it reminds us.
Exactly. Does that remind us? What does it remind you of?
Herod. But you know what's really interesting here? And once again, that brings us back to the story of Abraham going down to Egypt. He actually was afraid that they would kill me, the male, and let you, the female, live. In other words, even Abram foreshadows Moses.
Yes.
Foreshadows Moses, and Moses then foreshadows Jesus. And this is all from a careful reading of the text. In other words, we're not playing with the text. We're actually reading that this is how the Hebrew Bible connects the dots.
This is why peace scholars like Professor Yuval are saying that the Haggadah is trying to hide a little bit, hide Moses, because of course Moses would point out to Yeshua. That's the last thing they want in the Haggadah.
Now, I want to ask questions that are a little different now, maybe a little more of a personal nature. So maybe you can take a moment and just describe how was Passover celebrated in your family of origin before you became a follower of Yeshua. So how was it for you?
Well, in the kibbutz there was a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing was that what the chalutzim, the Jewish pioneers that escaped Europe and they wanted to create a new Israeli, a new kind of a man, a new man. So they skipped over 2,000 years of rabbinic tradition and went back to the Bible. So the holidays were really, really big thing in the kibbutz. Secular, completely secular, but at least there was a big emphasis on the holidays without keeping the oral law, without being religious. So we used to love the holiday, but of course, we never knew what the actual message of the holiday is. Just okay, so we used to say in the kibbutz, what represents all the Jewish holidays? They try to kill us, we win, let's eat. Yeah, that's it. That's the. But when Yeshua saved me,
wait with that. Wait with that. I want to hear first about how it used to be. How about you, sis?
So for me, growing up, Passover was an amazing time. I think, it was an opportunity to go to Brooklyn. I grew up in New Jersey, but we would go to Brooklyn to my aunt's house, and my grandmother would. I don't know how long she'd be cooking, but she'd be cooking for forever. And we would have her homemade gefilte fish. I'm sorry to turn your stomach, right? Gefilte fish and chopped liver,
traditions are the
exactly, potato kugel, and one of the most vivid memories I have, and this will connect afterwards to one of the most startling things or amazing things I saw after I came to faith. One of these, my grandfather, Gentle Ben, he was actually. He was huge. He was very, very muscular, and he was a truck driver, and he was incredibly strong. And I remember in Passover at the time of the washing of the hands ceremony, right? And he would take a towel, and he would, my big, strong grandfather, and he would put a towel over his arm, and he would go every single person around the table and serve us. And he would wash our hands. He would pour the water, and he would dry. And I just remember that's an image that's burnt into my mind forever. Is this amazing man of strength becoming a servant and serving the whole family.
Well, my experience is a little bit like yours. We would go to my grandparents' house, and usually my grandfather would call me earlier, because I was the oldest grandson, and so we would sit together and we'd divvy the Haggadah up for each one would get a section. So if I had a fight with my brother, I'd always assign to him the evil son. And then, of course, my grandmother would cook and that kind of deal. And one of the favorite parts was looking for the afikoman. And so my brothers and I always compete. And unfortunately, my brothers usually found it. I think I only found it once. But there was, just a great family time. But we would only get to the meal, by the way. We never rarely, maybe not never, but rarely get to the part after the meal. So you get to the meal, and that's over.
That is interesting. That's true. I don't remember. I don't have a lot of memories of after the meal.
Yeah.
I do have one of the biggest tragedies that ever took place for me on Passover was that I spotted the afikoman, and I pointed to it, and the girl that was looking next to me saw where I was pointing, and she grabbed it. I lost $5. My grandfather was going to give me $5. I lost it all.
So here's the question. How was it for you once you have become a follower of Yeshua and then you celebrated the Passover Seder? Was that any different?
Absolutely. I remember actually the day after I'd come to faith in Yeshua. And it was suddenly like he was looking at me the whole time and I never saw him. Like kind of like Magic Eye. I don't know if you remember the posters where you stared into those posters, those 3D posters.
Yeah.
And if you caught things just right, there was a picture underneath. And it was suddenly like, why hadn't I seen Jesus everywhere before? But then celebrating Passover and seeing the breaking of the matzah, taking the third cup, reading about Yeshua washing the disciples' feet, and then seeing a picture of my grandfather and thinking that's exactly what Yeshua did. And it was like, how in the world did I celebrate the Passover all my life? One of the most clear expressions of what Jesus did, the breaking of his body, the Lamb of God. How is it that it was so clear and I didn't see it?
Yeah, for me it's like for more than 20 years I was flying in an automatic pilot, through the holidays, and when Yeshua saved me, I saw the substance, I saw what it's all about. And it's like he took the wheel, but it's like the wheel was in his hands the whole time when I thought I'm an automatic pilot. But it was, and it's amazing because for the first time you see what's the purpose of the holiday. And who is the purpose of the holiday? And it's not me, and it's not the kibbutz, with all due respect. Yeah, it's the Messiah.
And I can very much resonate. I mean, it was very much like that for me as well. All of a sudden, it kind of comes alive, and everything has a meaning. And you say, "Wow, I've done this," like you say, on automatic pilot, for all those years. And it's right there. It's not hinting it; it's like shouting it. And I think in some way, our experience is perhaps a shadow for the day that not as individual but as a nation, the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, will see the one whom we have pierced and get it.
There's another Orthodox, religious Jewish Orthodox, he's a doctor, he's not a rabbi, he's a scholar, but he says, God took us out of Egypt, brought us to Israel. God is taking the Jewish people from all nations, bringing them, praise the Lord, now to Israel. He said, but Israel is still in a spiritual galut, exile. Israel is still, and he's waiting. A religious Jew, scholar, he's waiting for Israel to. We came physically to the land. Now he's looking for a second Passover, you can say, when we're going to be spiritually back in the land. And I think only through Yeshua you can bring us back to the spiritual land, to where we belong.
Amen.
They call matzah lechem ani.
Oh, lechem oni, yeah.
Lechem oni,
Yeah.
right? The bread of the afflicted.
Poverty, yeah.
But or afflicted, right? So you've got the word in Hebrew for affliction is la'anot, right? And what's really interesting, Zechariah 9:9. I've recently been studying this passage where it says that he comes righteous, and the English translates it humble.
Was it ani?
But it's the word there
Yeah, same one.
is the word for afflicted. In other words, you already have the intimation of in Zechariah 9:9 of the coming of a Messiah who's afflicted. And then it says, again in the English says, and bearing salvation, but the Hebrew there says, and save. In other words, you have a delivered Messiah, which intimates on the fact that the Messiah is going to be delivered. He's going to suffer. And then you have this presentation, Zechariah 12, of looking on him whom they've pierced. Zechariah 14, of this new Passover, this day is going to come where one day our people, I think, are going to realize, wow, Jesus has been right in front of us the whole time. And they'll finally be able to see him.
So in this article, Professor Yuval is quoting halachmania, the bread of affliction. He's saying, you know where the first mention of the bread of affliction? That's when Yeshua said, "This is my body given." He's quoting the Last Supper from Matthew and Luke. Professor Yuval is saying that's the first bread of affliction that we know of, the first historical record of the bread of affliction. And of course, we see it in the Haggadah later. By the way, Professor Yuval is saying he thinks the whole Gospel of Mark was the Messianic Haggadah, for which the rabbis gave a counterpart, tachlif, substitution.
Right.
Yeah. So he believes Mark was read as the Passover Haggadah for the Messianic Jews. And the rabbis came up with their own Haggadah. Actually, he says the oral law תגובה, reaction
Response.
for the New Testament, the whole oral law. That's how he ends the article.
So the oral law is a replacement theology. is what you say.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much, and I wish you a happy Passover
And the delicious gefilte
and
fish.
delicious gefilte fish for you guys and
Wow.
other stuff for
We
me.
heard you.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
For all our Jewish friends, the Passover Seder is not supposed to be about endless reading of rabbinical tales while you are impatiently waiting for the part when finally the meal is served. It is, however, about an ongoing story of redemption where Yeshua, son of Abraham and son of David, the Messiah of Israel, is redeeming us once and for all from our slavery to our sinful nature and into real freedom and everlasting life. To him, we eagerly wait until he returns the kingdom to Israel.
Okay. So, hopefully this isn't going to play. There we are. All right, so I don't know if you can see. Uh-oh. I don't know if you can see. I'm trying to put the meal together. Okay, I have the lamb shanks in the oven. And hi to anyone tuning in. I'm not sure, I don't have my chat up, so I can't see. So I do apologize that I cannot say hi to you by name. But thanks for joining my Seder Passover preparation. I really liked what they were saying just about when he said, you know, he was on autopilot for so long and that the Lord just started revealing stuff to him. And I think I feel that way, like, I almost feel like I just got saved. You know, like, I mean, the flat earth, finding out that the earth was flat was a very much a conversion feeling. Just, I mean, it just felt like immediately close to God, and it was quite a awesome experience for me. But even ever since then, I've been I feel like the Lord has been revealing all kinds of stuff to me. Okay, so I'm actually preparing the Haroset, which is supposed to be apples, but I'm allergic to apples, so I'm doing pears. And then you're supposed to do grape juice, which I accidentally bought apple juice. So we're just gonna go with what we got here. I am very new to this whole thing, so I'm sure there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. Okay. And I do have these beautiful flowers to make a bouquet with. Okay, so I'm gonna do pears and nuts. Hi.
Hi. I didn't almost the whole book.
Did you?
I read so much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Did you do any math?
Not yet. I was still gonna do some. But I'm not. I got a little math,
Okay.
like 11 math.
Okay.
And you can.
Okay. Okay, guys, we're gonna take a look. It's been an hour that the lamb shanks have been in there. So we're gonna take a look at it. I'm gonna turn this down because this is gonna boil over. And where's my hot pot holders? Here's one.
I was trying to get my sweatshirt, and I was going to party.
Oh, okay.
I gotta go before it starts raining again.
Okay. Oof.
And he said for me to come right back. And then she said, tell me to wait until it stops raining. So Steven came and
Ooh, this looks pretty good, but I'm not sure if it's quite done.
boom.
Shut the oven.
What is that?
I think it needs more
Oh,
time.
is that
This is
lamb?
the lamb. Yeah.
Ooh.
It looks good, but I feel like it needs a little more time. I wonder if I should
Smells-
maybe cook it with the lid off the rest of the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've never cooked lamb before. Here, I'm on a video.
Never even me either.
Never cooked lamb before, but I don't know. I think I should probably put it back in for a little bit longer.
Out the lid. I'm
Or
doing
no, I probably want to keep the lid on.
I am doing school. I gotta go to school. Bye.
Yeah, I think this needs the lid on, and it needs more time.
Bye. I'm going to school.
Go into your lesson. Yep. Okay. Their tutor is here.
School at home.
Okay, I think that needs. I think it needs more time. And we'll do. I just think it needs more time. So. Okay. So back to the Harrowset. Okay. So it'll be a little bit different, and I guess I'm going to use some pecans and some pistachios in this. See, I've never even heard of this. I've never even heard of the Harrowset. This is all new to me, and I don't understand why the modern churches, I don't understand why they would prefer to celebrate Easter, Ishtar, which is a pagan holiday. I don't know why they would choose to follow those holidays rather than... What do you need? A box? There's some cardboard boxes in my bedroom. You can use. Just empty one out if there's... Oh, okay. So, yeah, I just was disappointed. I'm disappointed that the churches are not being a little bit more true to their roots. That's all right.
I found one.
You can't control it. Okay, that's good.
I protect my head with it too.
All right. I'm not sure how finely I should chop these, but it seems like you would want it pretty finely chopped. If this is supposedly the mortar, this stood for the mortar that the Jews had to use to build the Egyptian kingdom while they were enslaved. And I didn't have any horseradish, but I have celery that we're going to use. Alright, I think this is probably good. Okay, so it's just peanuts and pears and apple juice. I think I will use some of this. Just for flavor, because I love pistachios. Oh, it's been a little bit of an intimidating day getting all this prepared because I just, I was never taught any of this. In fact, I will show you what I've been following. The kid's tutor who's out there helping actually got us this book. It's a family guide to biblical holidays, and by Robin Sampson and Linda Pierce. And so, yeah, they're telling us all the Passover stuff and the 4 cups, and yeah, it's all new to me because nobody ever taught us this. But I am excited to be learning. I feel, even just reading over this whole story and how, because we've been trying to overcome our sin nature, and there's, me, all my kids and myself, we struggle with sin. And, honestly, sometimes it feels like I am totally enslaved to these. If you wanted to pray for me, I've been trying to stop biting my fingernails, which is just a self-destructive behavior that the Lord has put on my heart to quit. These don't look very good. They taste okay. But it's so hard because I've bitten my fingernails my whole life, ever since I was a little kid. And so I have this years and years, decades of bad habits to try to overcome. And it's definitely, I feel like a slave to my sin, for sure. So I really just love this, that we are made free by the blood of the Lamb. And I'm just going to have faith for that He will set me free from the sin that enslaves us. Okay. All right, pistachios going in. And now we're going to cut up a pear. Oh, wow. It is hailing outside. This is pretty fun Oregon weather where it'll be sunny one moment and then raining the next, storming. Yesterday we actually had a thunder and lightning storm. But it was on and off. It's like the sun poked through a couple times. Same thing today. So it's supposed to be like this all week. And this is just the Oregon, bipolar Oregon weather. Okay. Here's, I hope I'm doing this right. I didn't even watch a video on how to prepare this. I just looked at the ingredients and I'm just going for it. I think it probably is supposed to be much more finely chopped because the images I've seen of this dish looks like mashed type of like a mash, like a dip, mashed thick dip kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe I was supposed to peel it. We'll see. I'm going to do 2 different pairs. I did an Asian pear and then one of these. I think it's Dianju. Or no, this isn't Dianju. I think. I don't know. It's a green pear. Oh, right here. Oh, I was right. It is Dianju. Pretty fitting, wouldn't you say? We're doing a Jewish holiday eating a Dianju pear. Yeah, so I got rid of all the bread in our house, and we're going to be eating unleavened bread all week. Which is exciting. These kind of ceremonies, you know, I think that humans like rituals and ceremonies because it makes them feel like they got to participate. You know, which I think is why the church has ended up having this Calvinistic cancer, adding to the gospel, adding something. They just want to add something. We always want to add something because it's, you know, it makes our ego feel better if we took part somehow in this salvation of ours. Okay, so I got the pears in there. And now I'm going to go grab some cinnamon. I thought I had some organic, but okay. And put some of this juice in. And give it a good stir. Alright, this does not look anything like... I feel like maybe it's supposed to be mashed. It does not look like... I wonder if I should like food process this. Like like I wonder if the nuts were supposed to be practically a powder. You guys can look at it. This does not look... It doesn't look like what I've seen. I think I might put this in the blender and give it a blend, a little choppy chop. We'll just taste it. I mean, it's really good. But I think it needs blended. Alright, well. I'm just going to cover it for a moment. And cover it. Okay. And I think we're going to get to the flower arrangement. Potatoes are probably almost done. Okay, that is, just turn that off for now. Right back. Had to get some peppers. All right, folks. Okay, and I think I'm going to put a little water in the bottom of here. Along with this flour food. Let's do that first. Directions: dissolve packet into 1 quart. put this in here. Alright, I wonder about how tall. Probably this height. Okay. Okay. Yep, they went through to the bottom. Yeah, I think that's a good height. I am not a flower arranger, so I don't know what I'm doing. Ah. Oh, little buddy. I feel like I probably should have like stabbed these through first. The holes? I don't know. Hi, buddy. You're cold. We'll go stand in front of the fireplace. And I love this, a little palm. Isn't that adorable? Maybe I could go right here. Oh, this one broke. I didn't realize. What?
It's about a dolphin brushing their teeth.
Oh, okay. Cool.
They literally brushing their teeth.
Really? Okay. This is the last of flour here. In your school stuff. You can't find your school stuff? Alright. The rest is gonna go in the compost.
Oh yeah, when you was in your room, we made doors with water.
Oh, you did. Alright. I think it's done.
I want to drink apple juice. Or I can drink this.
We are. That's for dinner. We're gonna have it at dinner.
Oh, do you cut some of that up?
If you want snacks, you're gonna have to go out to the fifth wheel where the snacks are at. Oh no, it's leaking out the bottom. Darn it! Uh-oh, Gideon, you need to watch out. Watch out! Oh shoot, my computer. All right, guys, I gotta go. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you all have a wonderful Passover.